Have you ever been in a relationship where things just don't add up? You ask about her past, but she dodges the questions. Or maybe she becomes unusually quiet when other men are mentioned. Your instincts are kicking in, and you can't shake the feeling that something is off. If you're looking for honesty and trust, these subtle behaviors might be red flags you're overlooking. In today's video, I'm going to reveal 10 crucial signs that can help you identify if she's hiding a more complex history. Stick around, because what I share today could save you from heartache and help you see things more clearly. 1. Comfort in physical intimacy. One of the first signs to pay attention to is how comfortable she is with physical touch and affection. Women who have been in multiple relationships may be more relaxed and confident when it comes to physical contact, whether it's holding hands, hugging, or even more intimate gestures. This ease doesn't necessarily mean anything negative. Many people become more comfortable with affection as they gain experience in relationships. However, if you notice that she's very at ease being physically close with you early on, it could indicate that she's been through various relationships where she learned how to navigate and manage physical intimacy without hesitation. It's about recognizing that she might have more experience in knowing how to connect physically, which can make her appear more confident and open in such moments. 2. Talks openly about sex. Women who have had multiple partners may be more comfortable discussing sex openly and without hesitation if she talks freely about intimate topics, shares her preferences, or openly discusses her past sexual experiences. It could be a sign that she's had a more extensive sexual history. This openness often comes from experience and comfort with her own sexuality. She might not shy away from discussing topics that some might consider taboo, and she could even bring up sex in a casual, everyday conversation. While being open about sex doesn't necessarily mean she's had many partners, it does show that she's confident in expressing her desires, boundaries, and experiences. This comfort with discussing sex can also be a sign of maturity and self-awareness, reflecting her ability to navigate intimate relationships with clarity and openness. 3. Jokes or comments about her past. Another sign to watch for is how she talks about her past relationships or experiences, especially through jokes or casual comments. Women who've had multiple partners might feel more comfortable mentioning their past, even in a light-hearted or humorous way. For example, she might joke about ex-boyfriends or make playful references to past relationships in a way that seems casual and unbothered. This openness can signal that she doesn't feel the need to hide or be secretive about her past. It's important to note that these jokes are often subtle, but they might give you insight into her previous experiences. Remember, this isn't necessarily a negative thing. It simply shows that she's comfortable with her past and isn't afraid to bring it up in conversation. 4. A large social circle of men. Another sign that might indicate a woman has had multiple partners is if she has a large social circle of male friends. Women who are comfortable around men, especially if they have a significant number of male acquaintances, may have built these relationships through past connections, whether romantic or platonic. She might have a history of navigating different social groups, developing friendships or relationships with various men along the way. This doesn't automatically mean she's been romantically involved with all of them. but it does show that she's comfortable in mixed-gender environments and may have had more opportunities to explore connections. Keep in mind, though, that having male friends doesn't necessarily point to a sexual history. It could simply mean she enjoys having a diverse group of friends. The key is observing how comfortable and fluid she is in these social circles. 5. A strong desire for independence. Women who have had multiple relationships might often show a strong sense of independence. This can come across as a desire for personal space, freedom, and a reluctance to rush into deep commitments. She may value her independence because she's learned to rely on herself after experiencing various relationships. For example, she might prioritize her career, hobbies, or personal growth over diving headfirst into a romantic relationship. This independence isn't a bad thing. In fact, it can be a sign of emotional maturity and self-reliance. However, if you notice that she prefers to maintain some distance or doesn't seem in a hurry to define the relationship, it could be due to her past experiences, where she has learned to enjoy her own company and navigate life without being overly dependent on a partner. 6. Skilled at flirting. Women who have had more romantic or intimate experiences might be particularly skilled at flirting. This means she knows how to use charm, body language, and subtle cues to attract attention and engage people in a playful, confident way. Flirting comes naturally to her, as she's likely had practice over the course of various relationships or interactions. You might notice that she knows exactly how to make eye contact, give a teasing smile, or drop a compliment in a way that feels effortless. This skill doesn't necessarily mean she's trying to pursue a romantic connection. It can simply be a reflection of her experience in knowing how to make others feel drawn to her. It's important to remember that being a good flirt doesn't automatically imply a long sexual history, but it can suggest that she's learned how to navigate social dynamics and knows how to use charm to her advantage. 7. Unbothered by being single. Women who have had multiple relationships often develop a strong sense of independence, and one of the clearest signs of this is how comfortable they are being single. Instead of feeling anxious or desperate to be in a relationship, she might fully embrace her single life and enjoy her own company. This ease with being alone usually comes from having experienced several romantic connections, which taught her that she doesn't need a partner to feel whole or validated. Having gone through different relationships, she's learned that her happiness isn't dependent on anyone else, and as a result, she doesn't rush into the next relationship just for the sake of being with someone. You may notice that she has a busy, fulfilling life outside of relationships. She could be deeply invested in her career, hobbies, friendships, or personal growth. She likely enjoys her freedom and values the space she has to focus on herself without the need to cater to someone else's expectations. When asked about her single status, she might speak confidently about how much she enjoys it, rather than expressing frustration or concern about finding a partner. This independence doesn't mean she's not open to relationships. It simply indicates that she's in no hurry to settle down or commit unless it's with the right person. Her comfort with being single may come across as a refreshing self-assurance. She knows what she wants and isn't afraid to wait for it, which could be a result of her past experiences, where she learned what works for her in a relationship and what doesn't. Another aspect to consider is that she might have a clear sense of boundaries. If she chooses to be single, it could be because she's seen the value in taking time to reflect on her own needs, desires and goals, rather than jumping from one relationship to another. This period of singleness might be a conscious decision to prioritize her own growth and healing, especially if she's been through a number of different relationships. Being unbothered by being single doesn't mean she's closed off to love. It just shows that she's comfortable with who she is, regardless of her relationship status. This is a sign of emotional maturity and self-reliance, traits that are often developed through a history of varied romantic experiences. Her calm and collected attitude towards singlehood may even be inspiring, showing others that being single isn't something to be feared, but rather a time for self-discovery and empowerment. 8. Unclear relationship boundaries. A woman who has had multiple relationships might sometimes exhibit more fluid or unclear boundaries when it comes to defining relationships. She may have navigated a variety of romantic or physical connections in the past, which could result in a more relaxed or less traditional approach to what is typically expected in relationships. This can manifest in different ways. She might be comfortable with casual relationships, have close friendships with former romantic partners, or be more open to situations that blur the lines between friendship and romance. For example, you might notice that she spends a lot of time with male friends, and while the relationship appears platonic, there's a level of closeness that seems to go beyond a typical friendship. Or perhaps she's open to physical intimacy early on, without seeking to define the relationship as something serious or committed. This kind of fluidity doesn't necessarily mean she's being dishonest or manipulative, but it could indicate that she's had past experiences where traditional boundaries between emotional and physical intimacy have been more flexible. This may also show up in how she approaches commitment. Women who have had more diverse relationship experiences might not feel the need to lock down or define a relationship immediately. She could be open to seeing where things go without needing a clear label, and might not prioritize exclusivity right away. For some, this can be confusing or even frustrating, especially if you're someone who prefers more structured, defined relationships from the beginning. At the same time, it's important to remember that unclear boundaries can sometimes be a sign of emotional detachment, where someone has learned to keep relationships more casual to avoid vulnerability. After experiencing different romantic dynamics, she might have developed this approach as a way to protect herself from emotional hurt or to keep her options open. The key here is communication. If you find the lines between friendship, romance, and intimacy are a bit blurry, it's crucial to discuss what both of you expect and need from the relationship. Understanding her past experiences can help you navigate these potentially unclear boundaries with more clarity and mutual respect. 9. Mentions of being experienced. When a woman openly mentions or alludes to being experienced in a sexual or romantic context, it can be a sign that she has had multiple partners. This experience could be something she references casually in conversation, whether directly or indirectly. For example, she might talk about knowing what she likes or doesn't like in relationships, or she could drop hints about her familiarity with different types of romantic dynamics, perhaps mentioning how certain situations or behaviors don't faze her because she's been there before. These mentions are not necessarily boastful or overt. They often come across in subtle ways. For instance, if you're discussing relationships or intimacy, she might say something like, "I've learned a lot from past relationships," or "I'm pretty experienced when it comes to knowing what I want." These kinds of comments can indicate that she's had a variety of experiences that have shaped her views on relationships and sex. The tone in which she says these things is also important. It's usually relaxed and confident, not defensive or secretive. This openness is often a reflection of someone who's comfortable with their past and doesn't feel the need to hide or downplay it. Her experience may also become evident in how she handles different situations within the relationship. For example, she might display a high level of confidence during intimate moments, demonstrating that she knows how to navigate them without hesitation. She may also approach relationships with a clear understanding of what works for her and what doesn't, suggesting she's learned from a range of experiences. This might show up in how quickly she identifies what she's looking for in a partner, or how she navigates certain challenges within the relationship. For example, she might quickly recognize red flags or be more aware of her own boundaries and needs, demonstrating a maturity that often comes with experience. At the same time, mentioning being experienced can sometimes signal that she's more open to non-traditional relationship dynamics. She may be comfortable with casual relationships, friends with benefits arrangements, or situations where physical intimacy doesn't always equate to deep emotional commitment. This can be appealing to some partners, while others might find it challenging if they're looking for a more conventional, committed relationship from the outset. It's essential to approach these mentions of experience with sensitivity and without judgment. Everyone's past is different, and having more experience doesn't make someone less deserving of respect or a committed relationship. Instead, it can mean they have a clearer understanding of what they want and need, both emotionally and physically. If she mentions her experience, it can also open the door to deeper conversations about expectations, boundaries, and what each person is looking for in the relationship. Understanding where she's coming from and acknowledging her experience without making assumptions can create a healthier dynamic. If a woman brings up her experience, it's important to listen carefully and approach the conversation with openness. It's not about reading too deeply into the comment, but rather understanding that it could be a sign that she's had a wider range of relationships or intimate encounters, which may shape her approach to the current relationship in ways that can either strengthen or challenge the connection, depending on how it's navigated. 10. Prioritizes physical over emotional connection. A key sign that a woman may have had multiple partners is if she seems to prioritize physical intimacy over emotional connection in relationships. This doesn't mean she's incapable of forming emotional bonds, but rather that she may be more comfortable initiating or maintaining relationships on a physical level, rather than diving deep into emotional vulnerability right away. Women who have been with several partners might have learned to separate physical intimacy from emotional attachment, especially if they've had experiences where emotional involvement led to disappointment or hurt. For instance, if she's quick to engage in physical affection, whether it's casual touches, kissing, or even more intimate encounters, but seems less focused on getting to know you emotionally or discussing deeper feelings, It could be a reflection of her past experiences. This pattern might suggest that she's used to forming connections that are initially more physical and takes time or hesitates to build emotional bonds. This can sometimes happen with people who've been in casual or non-committed relationships, where the physical aspect was more prominent than emotional depth. She might also show signs of emotional detachment or keep her personal feelings and vulnerabilities at a distance. For example, even though she's comfortable with physical affection, she might avoid conversations about her emotional needs, long-term goals, or personal history. This kind of detachment could be her way of protecting herself after having been in multiple relationships where she might have gotten hurt. In many cases, people who have experienced emotional pain in past relationships tend to put up walls to avoid repeating those experiences, often finding comfort in the familiarity of physical connections while keeping their emotional guard up. This behavior can also be a sign that she's navigating relationships differently than someone who places emotional bonding as a priority. If she has had many partners, she might have learned that forming emotional ties too quickly can lead to complications. So she leans into the physical side of things because it feels safer or more controllable. This might mean she is cautious about letting her guard down emotionally, preferring instead to build a physical connection first. It's crucial to remember that prioritizing physical intimacy doesn't necessarily mean she's shallow or uninterested in a meaningful relationship. It might just indicate that based on her past experiences, she's grown to value physical connection as a foundation before opening up emotionally. Some women who have had many relationships may take a wait-and-see approach to emotions, letting the physical aspect guide the early stages of the relationship while they gauge whether or not they can trust their partner with their feelings. If you notice this behavior, the best way to navigate it is through open and honest communication. Ask her how she views emotional and physical intimacy and whether she feels comfortable sharing more about herself emotionally over time. Being patient and giving her space to open up at her own pace can help her feel safe to connect on a deeper level. It's also possible that she's had experiences where physical intimacy was used as a tool for connection, but she didn't feel valued for who she truly is. If that's the case, helping her feel seen and appreciated beyond the physical aspect of the relationship can go a long way in fostering a stronger emotional bond. It's essential to approach these situations with understanding rather than jumping to conclusions, because everyone processes intimacy differently based on their history and what they've learned from past relationships. In the end, if she seems to place more emphasis on physical connection at the start, it's a sign that she may have had various romantic or sexual experiences that shaped her approach. Understanding this can help you navigate the relationship in a way that balances both physical and emotional intimacy and ensures that both partners are getting what they need from the connection. Remember, these signs are not about judgment, but understanding. Everyone has a different past, and it's important to approach relationships with an open mind. The key here is to be aware of the patterns and behaviors that might indicate more than what meets the eye. So, what do you think? Do any of these signs resonate with your experiences? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video. Thanks for watching. Also, if you're interested in more eye-opening insights into relationships and human behavior, check out our next video on how to read people like a book.